Hey folks, welcome to DocTalk. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson here at Kansas State University. Thanks for joining me. We're going to talk about heat stress. We're going to talk about clinical signs, prevention, treatment. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoy the show.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com. This segment brought to you by Kansas Regenerative Medicine. Your stem cells, your health, your life.
Hey folks, welcome to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thompson here, and we're going to talk about heat stress in cattle. And it's something that we go through every year. It's something that we have a lot of questions about. There's been a lot of work done on this area, and yet sometimes we don't tie it all together. So today what we're going to try to do is talk a little bit about, how do we determine when heat stress is going to occur. We're going to then talk about some of the clinical signs that you can tell whether your cattle are suffering from heat stress, whether it's cattle out on the pasture, cattle in a feedlot, maybe it's a show calf that you're taking into a show this summer. Then we're going to talk about ways that we can prevent it. And then if it happens and we get an animal that's severely heat stressed, we'll talk a little bit about how to treat it. Great topic. Thanks for joining us. So when we talk about heat stress, typically what we've talked about is right here, the thermal heat index. And you can see this chart that shows as temperature and relative humidity increase, we increase the thermal heat index. Now, as wind speed increases, wind speed will decrease the thermal heat index. So thermal heat index is calculated by using three different measures. The temperature, as temperature goes up, the heat index goes up. As humidity goes up, the heat index goes up. But as wind speed goes up, the heat index drops. So those are the three things that we use to calculate. That is just kind of a temporary at the moment type of heat index. So at any point in time during the day, we know what the thermal heat index is. The thermal neutral zone of cattle is between 59 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit. So when we go into a thermal heat index between 72 and 78, we start to see mild stress. When we get between 78 and 84 or 83, we start to see heat stress in cattle. And then as we go above 84, we'll get into the danger. And then when we get above 98 degrees on the thermal heat index, that's when we'll start to see animals die from heat stress. Now, the new way of looking at this, so thermal heat index kind of gives you the danger zone, the caution zone, and the extreme danger zone. And what we have to understand is that what is imperative in heat stress in cattle is that they have the opportunity to cool down at night. So cattle will tolerate heat during the day and they need to cool down at night. So when we look at the thermal heat load index, the thermal heat load index is an indication of when cattle are building from the thermal heat index, they're building heat in the body. And if they don't get to cool down at night, they'll retain that heat. And the next day, if it gets hot again, they'll continue to accumulate heat in the body. And so then it may take 2 or 3 nights before the animals cool down to a point in which we can actually work them or do something with them. So we have thermal heat load index, we have an accumulated heat load. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we come back and we get into some of the things that you will see cattle starting to exhibit clinical signs of heat stress. Thanks for watching today. More after these messages.
Watch Ag AM in Kansas online at agaminkansas.com.
Working your cattle just got easier. Introducing the new Vet Gun Delivery System. a new way to apply topical insecticides to your cattle. The Vet Gun lets you remotely treat cattle with effective parasite control, so you can do it just walking among the herd. It's that simple. The proven topical insecticide AML Vet Cap is used with the Vet Gun. It works fast to control horn flies and lice while minimizing stress on your cattle. Fast, easy, effective. Vet Gun. Check with your animal health supplier for availability.
As fourth-generation farmers themselves, Heinen Brothers Ag Service understands the risk and rewards of farming. So when it comes to quality aerial and ground application, fertilizer, ag chemicals, and anhydrous ammonia, call Heinen Brothers Ag today, 800-760-4964.
Ag Promo Source is a unique group of marketing specialists with one mission: help your ag business grow. Each affiliate has their own area of expertise, and they work together to bring you advice, products, and services. To get started, visit agpromosource.com. Ag Promo Source. Together we grow.
This segment brought to you by Santa Fe Trail Meats in Overbrook. Visit us online at sftmeats.com.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thompson here. We're talking about heat stress in cattle. So it gets a little bit confusing because the terms are somewhat similar, but we have thermal heat index, thermal heat load index. Thermal heat load index is the same as the thermal heat index. The only difference is it takes into account the sun beating down on you. And so we have what we call a black globe temperature that's also incorporated in that. Regardless of that, whether you use THI or TLI, we build heat load in cattle during the day. If the temperature doesn't drop, or if the humidity stays too high at night and the cattle can't dissipate heat and cool down, then we're going to see an accumulation, or the accumulated heat load, in the animal's body. And if we have 2 or 3 nights where we don't get cooling, that's when you really need to pay attention and watch your animals out on the pasture or cattle in the feedlot of continuously building heat load, and then get into the danger zone of those. And so that's what really worries me, is about stringing those 2 or 3 days with no night cooling together. Now, another thing is, if you've had severe rainfall and then we turn into a hot period, remember, humidity increases the thermal heat index. Well, the humidity from the ground and the mud, where those cattle are closer to, can increase in that microenvironment relative to what we feel outside the feedlot with no mud. So be aware of that. So how do cattle dissipate heat? Well, the best way that cattle dissipate heat is they give off heat just like we do through their body surface. And people will say, well, cattle don't sweat, and that's not true, because a lot of their cooling does come from sweating, and cattle sweat in their armpits and their groin is where most of the sweat glands of cattle are located. When we see cattle starting to open mouth breathe and pant, and that's what everybody says, well, cattle cool themselves through evaporative cooling. When we start to see cattle open mouth breathing and panting, they're in heat stress, distress mode. They aren't down, but they're starting to suffer from high thermal heat index, high humidity, high temperature, low wind speed, okay? And so the first thing we'll see is cattle will start to hover around water. They'll try to catch a breeze. They'll spread out in the pen. They'll try to find shade. Different things of behavior is what we'll see at the beginning when cattle start to feel discomfort from heat stress. Then we'll watch those cattle start to, once we start to come into the pen and see those animals starting to pant, that's when the animal, and the panting mechanism is kind of neat because it moves air in and out, which then helps with the evaporative cooling in the respiratory tract, which then helps cool the body. But 80% of the body's cooling comes from heat being released off of the surface. Only 20% is from this evaporative cooling. When we see that evaporative cooling, the reason why the animal takes short breaths, because if it takes big deep breaths while trying to cool, it would hyperventilate. Who thought? So the good Lord in Detroit designed these animals to cool themselves just like a dog panting or a cow panting, short breaths, evaporative cooling. If we have things such as respiratory disease, it could impair that animal's ability to cool itself, and some of those animals will drop out when we have heat stress. We're going to come back, we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do to prevent heat stress after these messages.
My name's Karen Cope and I have multiple sclerosis. I heard about the stem cell research with the Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center. Before we decided to do that, I had cognitive testing done. After the stem cells, I had the cognitive testing completed again, and the results indicated that I had a 6-point increase in my cognitive abilities. It was like somebody had taken Windex and washed all the fog off my brain, and so I had the concrete, validated information that stem cells worked.
Your investment in the Beef Checkoff is opening new doors for beef. Today and tomorrow, our commitment to long-term planning helps ensure your profitability from one generation to the next.
Hello, this is Caleb Plyler & Son Charolais. This is my son Hook and my wife Brianna. And we operate a purebred Charolais operation in Hope, Arkansas. You know, in the business that we're in, the beef checkoff dollars are very important to us. A lot of that money is to educate people, just like kids that's in Huck's class, the importance of eating beef. You know, it's a high protein product that it's a very important part of our diet. Sometimes we get this bad rap as beef is not, you know, what we really need to be doing from a dietary standpoint. But, you know, being able to get to the kids and let them know that, you know, beef, it is what needs to be for dinner. You know, one of the bigger things with our family is getting to go out and show off some of our cattle. Huck, he gets to show a lot of heifers.
A lot of what we do trying to get him into showing is the fact that it's teaching him discipline, respect for the animals, and it's going to continue to give him lifelong skills throughout his life.
But I think it's very important that, you know, the next generation understands how important the beef industry is. Just like Huck here, we plan on him one day operating this farm. And, you know, if we can do that, we're doing what we need to. Because, you know, this country is founded upon people that, you know, have family traditions and do a really good job of keeping those traditions going. Huck, one day, what kind of cows do you want to grow up to have, you think?
Charolais.
Charolais, all right. You know, if the beef checkoff dollars are going to really good causes and really promoting beef, then the consumers are going to want to buy more beef, and that leads for us making more money in the end, and it really helps the quality of people's cow herds because we're able to enhance our genetics even more.
Hi, I'm Kim Mandring with Hardy Insurance. I'm here to help you with all of your farm and ranch needs. When it comes to protecting your operation and your family, you need a name you can trust at a price you can afford. Call me today or visit hardyaviationins.com.
Healthy cows start with the new hired hand automatic livestock sprayer. Rancher invented to provide an efficient alternative to pour-on and injectable parasite management systems. The portable design allows cattle to treat themselves head to hoof. Strategic device placement with pass-through activation technology takes the stress out of parasite treatment for cattle and the rancher, leaving more time to tend to other vital tasks on the farm. To learn more, visit cowsprayer.com. The new hired hand makes healthy cows easy.
Sure Crop Fertilizers was started by my father, Don Sherman, and my mother, Shirley Sherman. Family business that started in the 80s. We predominantly focus on plant nutrients and what we can do to give growers better responses with the fertilizer dollars that they do, and what we can do to make those things work better for the grower. Based out of Seneca, Kansas. We work with growers in their soil analysis to figure out what they need, and then we can put those in a blend that gives them the best results, and so that we can deliver that direct to their farm so that they have those nutrients where they need them, when they need them, and so that they can apply them in a manner that's very efficient to them and works well in their planting systems and what they're doing. Sure Crop Fertilizers has been around for a long time. We always say we're big enough to take care of everything you need, but we're small enough to do it quickly. You can get a hold of us at 1-800-635-4743. Our website is surecropfertilizers.com, and you can always email me at Corey@surecropfertilizers.com, and with any questions you have, we're glad to answer it and work with you.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Soybean Commission. Progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson at Kansas State University. We're talking about heat stress. So which cattle have the highest risk? And those are our black-hided cattle that are finished, or our fat cattle, okay? So finished black-hided cattle would be our, if we were going to prioritize animals within a feeding facility, those would be the ones of highest priority of placing an extra water tank in the pen, or providing more shade for. Our 5-weight, 6-weight calves can tolerate more of this than our finished cattle can tolerate. So once we have identified the animals that we're going to prioritize, now we need to start thinking about ways that we prevent it. In feedlots, building mounds in the wintertime are there to give cattle a dry place to lay down. Well, in the summertime, those cattle can go up on the mounds and they can catch a breeze over the top of the pens. So mounds can be a positive for helping prevent heat stress. Another thing that can prevent heat stress is mowing. Going out around the pens, knocking down the weeds, making sure that we have the weeds knocked down to increase airflow. When I'm thinking about heat stress and alleviating heat stress, I'm thinking about how can I increase ventilation. Pen spacing. You know, if we have cattle that are in holding pens, we want to make sure that we open them up to give them more area to catch and give them more space so that they can catch a breeze. Water tank space. Water tank space is a premium. Cattle will drink a lot. Cattle drink 3 times their dry matter intake in the spring, winter, and fall, but they will drink 5 times their dry matter intake in the summer. So providing lots of water tank space is really, really good. And with some of those heavier cattle during heat stress events, we'll actually put water tanks in the pen, some of the big silver water tanks. If you get them too big, that water will get hot in there. So we keep them small and refill them frequently or put a float on them. Okay, mounds, water tank space, wind, airflow, shade, and bedding are another 2. For shade, cattle require 20 square foot of shade per head. So if you're going to build shade for cattle and you build it too small, you'll wind up with cattle trying to crowd in that shade. You'll get a mud bog around there and you'll wind up starting to get foot rot issues and things to that nature. We want to have 20 square foot of shade, and we want to align that shade in a rectangle north to south so that when the sun comes up in the east and moves to the west, our shade moves in the pen and we spread out and we don't get urination and defecation in one area, and we wind up having a drier area all the way around for the cattle in the yard. And lastly, bedding. We think about bedding in the winter when it's raining and when it's cold and when it's muddy, and we put bedding down for the little guys. And to be honest with you, bedding can work just as well in the summer. When we have heat stress events, like let's say it's 90 degrees outside, if it's 97 degrees outside, the dirt floor can be 140 degrees because of that radiant temperature of the sun. You know, you've seen it on TV, they say, well, it's 97 degrees today, but it's 140 down here on the field. Same way with the pen surface. So we'll put 6 inches of straw out to let new calves lay down on, and that will actually provide them a cooler place to lay and drop the temperature of where they're laying by 30 or 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Just some of the things you can do. However I can increase airflow, increase water tank space, provide shade to alleviate radiant heat, and bedding to give those animals a place to lay down. When we come back, we'll talk about treatment of heat stress. You're watching DocTalk.
No matter where, no matter why, the Veterinary Health Center at Kansas State University is committed to providing quality patient care to animals and exceptional customer service to their owners. From routine checkups to emergency and specialty care, our world-renowned specialists and experienced professionals are here to discover, to teach, and to heal.
Let us know.
How can I help? How can we help?
Hey folks, Dr. Dan here. Thanks for joining us for our Cattle First Minute as sponsored by Boehringer Ingelheim Vet Medica. And today we're going to talk about identifying sick cattle. And the first thing I look for in identifying sick cattle is cattle that aren't eating. So we're going to look for slab-sided or gant cattle, and sick cattle don't eat, and cattle that don't eat get sick. The next thing I'll look at is depression. Is the animal depressed? Does it have a dull, listless appearance? Does it try to just kind of snake away from me? And so if calf that's not coming to the bunk, one that's got a dull appearance, depressed appearance, those are going to be my 2 big clinical signs to get those calves out of the pen. And so the DART method, depression, anorexia, respiratory rate, limping, other things that will show you signs that cattle are sick or that cattle need to be helped.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
We do business with Blueville because of the quality of their work. It is excellent quality, and because they make a commitment to their customers.
We enjoy the benefits of hiring a good company to help us maintain this home.
We will always do business with Blueville. We have for many, many years, and there's no reason for us to look for any other service.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture. To join today or more information, go to kfb.org or find us on Facebook or Twitter.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thompson here. We're talking about heat stress. And when we think about heat stress, we've talked about, when it happens, what cattle look like when they succumb to heat stress, and then the last one is how we could prevent it. Now let's talk about if one of your calves or feeder cattle would succumb to heat stress, what should you do? And if we have an animal, the first thing is you're going to notice that it has really labored breathing and panting and stumbling. And those animals that are in heat stress distress, we want to make sure that we coat them with water. Now, if you go out and you have a pen of cattle that has heat stress and you hit them with water and spray them down to cool them down, once you make that commitment, you need to do that until the heat stress event is over. If you stop doing it, you can create more damage than good. So if you hit them once, you need to keep doing it until the temperature subsides and we cool off. If we're going to take an animal that is suffering from severe heat stress, the first thing you want to do is cool that animal's body. And we want to make sure that we hit it with the garden hose, Balzer tank, whatever, and make sure we cool that animal down on the outside with the water, and we get the evaporative cooling off that, simulating the sweat off of the entire body surface, not just where the sweat glands are located. Some veterinarians recommend a shot of dexamethasone at that time. It's an antipyretic, meaning that it decreases body temperature. Work with your local veterinarian in that scenario. Once you have an animal, if you have one animal that goes down from heat stress, you can be assured that you have an issue now in other cattle across the feed yard, in your herd, providing emergency shade, providing emergency water. Sometimes putting a silver tank in the corner is not enough. We'll actually put plastic lining over our feed bunks and put sandbags at the end, and we will increase the sandbags and fill the feed bunks with water. So there are many different things that we can utilize to provide more water, to provide more air movement, and to provide shade. Those are our big things that we're going to do that. And remember, prioritize in the pens that have the heavier dark-hided cattle. Those are the ones we want to work with first. Now, we've talked about thermal heat index to predict heat stress events. The USDA has an app. To go to this app and have it on your person, on your phone, where you can punch up what the prediction is for today, tomorrow, the next week for heat stress for cattle in your area. You can actually look at a map. Great app, great work by USDA. So we can use that to predict. Remember to look for cattle that are panting. If we have a lot of cattle panting across the feed yard, that's when we really need to focus on prevention methods, making sure that weeds are knocked down, make sure we have adequate water tank supply, adequate water pressure to keep up with the cattle drinking more. Remember, they drink 5 times more in the summer of dry matter intake relative to 3 times dry matter intake in the fall, spring, and summer. And then lastly, making sure we want increased airflow, shade 20 square foot per head to decrease temperature and the radiant heat from the sun, but focus on airflow, shade, and water, and watch for night cooling. If we don't have night cooling for 2 or 3 nights in a row, you really need to be concerned about the accumulated heat load. That's trying to tie it all together for heat stress. Thanks for watching DocTalk. Remember, if you want to know more about what we do here at DocTalk, you can go on the web at www.doctalktv.com. Always work with your local veterinarian. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson. Thanks for joining us today. I'll see you down the road.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com.